Hello, good evening. Welcome to another installment of Dwayne Allen Guitar Concepts. It's been a long time. I haven't seen you guys in a while, but I'm back with some new information. I was looking through my old videos today and I was thinking, what can I talk about that I haven't really gotten into lately in my lessons? And I just realized I haven't done a lesson on how to play over altered dominant chords. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As a lot of my lessons end up being, this is not anything that I invented. It's very little that any of us invent. We're just kind of continuing what we've learned in the tradition. But these are all things that you can definitely find on other pages or websites or whatever. But I'm just going to tell you how I approach this stuff and the scales and the techniques that I use. I'm not going to discuss all the possibilities because it would be too long. I'm just going to give you some of the obvious ones, okay? All right, so for those of you who are into jazz improvising and you want to add some new colors and sounds in your playing, these are going to be some cool concepts for you. Okay, so when we're playing jazz and the dominant 7 chord comes up in a song and you're going to improvise over it, the first obvious choice that most of us do is the Mixolydian scale, right? So if you're playing over a G7 or G13, whatever, what I tell most of my newer students for jazz is you just play a G Mixolydian scale. All it is a major scale with a flat 7, right? Now, that works fine if you have a regular dominant 7 or a dominant 9 or a 13, but if you start getting into what we call altered dominance, and an altered dominant is when you have, usually it's an altered ninth. If you have like a G7 flat 9 or a G7 sharp 9, we call that an altered dominant. Now you can have variations on that too. You can have fifths included. It's like a G7 sharp 5 flat 9 or a sharp 5 sharp 9 and any combination of those. So those are all what you would consider an altered dominant. But usually it has to do with the ninth being altered and for the most part. Once you do that, the regular Mixolydian doesn't work anymore, okay? So here are some of the more popular possibilities that you can use over an altered dominant. So let's say you have a G7 flat 9, okay? One of the first choices is you can play, I'm going to do everything in G, by the way, G altered dominant, okay? So one of the first choices that I teach my students is you can actually use the harmonic minor scale. So like all scales, the harmonic minor scale has modes, okay? And the fifth mode of the harmonic minor scale, so if we're in C harmonic minor, the fifth mode would be G, okay? So we would play a C harmonic minor over a G7 flat 9 or whatever, okay? Now, what that mode is basically if you play G to G within C harmonic minor, it ends up being like a Mixolydian scale with a flat 2 and a flat 6. So if I would go like this. It's got a really kind of a gypsy kind of a sound to it, very cool. So if you had a G7 flat 9, you would play a C harmonic minor starting on G. This is what it's going to sound like. I think the chord that I have locked in, it might be a 7 sharp 9, but it still works. So check this out. All right, yeah, so it's a 7 sharp 9, but here's what a G, what did I call that? G Mixolydian flat 2, flat 6. Right? So that's an obvious one that works well. The reason being is that most people know a harmonic minor scale. So all you got to do is play a C harmonic minor over a G7 altered. And then you just got to remember when you're playing the C that you want to kind of focus on that G root. Okay? All right, so another obvious choice that a lot of people do is they call it the half-whole diminished scale. So a diminished scale is like a symmetrical scale where you go half step, whole step, half step, whole step the whole way up. So you kind of go like this. Actually, no, I played the wrong one. I played a melodic minor. Let me try this again. Okay, so that's a half whole diminished. Now, the way I teach my students, the way to do this is I teach them one movable form of a diminished scale, and it goes up. I'm going to play it in A flat, and I'll explain why in a moment. But the fingering is very easy. It goes 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, and then go down the fret. 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. So I teach this basic diminished form, which is actually, this particular one is a whole half. But the way I teach my students is I say, okay, whatever dominant 7 altered that you have, if you go up a half step and play the regular diminished whole half, it ends up being the same thing as a half whole on G. So it gets confusing. But the way I basically tell my students is, learn this G diminished form. I originally teach it in G. But you play it up a half step against the G. So if you're in G, you would play an A flat diminished form, okay? Gets confusing, but that's what works. So let's say you're in C altered, then you would play a D flat diminished form, okay? So the reason why this works is if you start on G and you move your way up, you have the root, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the major third, the flat 5, the regular 5th, the 13th, and the flat 7. So it covers all those altered tones, okay? So just to reiterate, I'm gonna play the A flat whole half diminished, but it's over a G altered, because this way I don't get involved with the 2 different kinds of diminished. We just do the one form and you just move it up a half step. So this is what it sounds like. Covers all the altered tones. Got the idea? Pretty cool, huh? Works great, sounds great, and it covers a lot of the altered tones, okay? Now, another one that people use is, it's called the altered scale, but basically all it is you play a melodic minor scale up a half step. So if you're playing a G7 altered, you play an A flat melodic minor, okay? So it's a lot like we did G7 altered, then you play an A flat diminished scale, right? G7 altered, A flat melodic minor scale. And why does that work? Because if you start on the G and work your way up, G is the root, A flat is the flat 9, sharp 9, major third, flat 5, and then sharp 5, and then flat 7, and then root. So it's only one note different than a diminished, but it works really, really well. This is what people use quite a bit. So it sounds like this. Got the idea? Pretty cool. So I did an A flat melodic minor over a G7 altered, right? These are some of the more popular ways of doing it. So what do we have so far? We did a C harmonic minor over the altered G. So the G is the 5th mode of the C harmonic minor, which ends up being a mixolydian with a flat 2 and a flat 6. Okay, it's a lot to think about. Actually, that one's not that hard. If you take a G mixolydian, flat the 2, and you take the 6 and flat that, there you go, right? So that's where the name of that mode comes from. I'm going to give you another one now. So this one is one of the modes of the harmonic major, which is a scale that not a lot of people use, but it's got a great sound to it. So G is the 5th mode of C harmonic major, okay? And what we would call this one would be a mixolydian flat 2, okay? So for instance, you have 1, flat 2, and then the rest of it's G mixolydian. Okay, so anytime you have like a 13 flat 9, you would be able to use this scale. So this is what this one sounds like. So this is fifth mode of C harmonic major. If you don't know that one, learn that one. And then it's starting on G, so it's a Mixolydian flat 2. Very hip sound, right? Very cool. So those are some really great choices for you. So all of these scales, they have certain sounds, certain kind of moods to them. So what I do with my students is I do exactly this. I tell them, learn the scales, make sure you know how to play them, get the sound in your head, and then lock in a chord and then just improvise with these concepts. I do a lot of this. Instead of practicing tunes sometimes, I'll work on a concept and I'll just improvise with that concept, get new sounds in your ear. So we did the harmonic minor, the harmonic major, and then we did the melodic minor up a half step, the whole half diminished up a half step. Another thing that you can do, that's not really an altered dominant, but sometimes you'll have like a dominant 7 flat 5 chord that you want to outline. And when you do that, you wouldn't want to use the diminished and all that. So for instance, if you have a dominant 7 flat 5, okay, that's when you would use the Lydian dominant scale. Okay, and what that is basically a Mixolydian with a sharp 4, which is the same thing as a flat 5. Okay, so this is not quite as far out sounding as the other ones, but it's definitely something you need to know. Right? That one works really well. And I usually will tell my students, you can play a Lydian dominant over a regular dominant chord. Even though the person who's comping might be playing the 5th, they should be listening to you. If you decide to play the Lydian dominant with the flat 5, then they should change their chord voicings. But so you can play a Lydian dominant over a regular dominant scale or regular dominant chord, and it'll work, and it won't sound as far out as the altered ones, okay? Another possibility is sometimes in a song you'll have a dominant 7 sharp 5. And in that case, you kind of have a very specialized kind of a sound. You may not want to use the half whole diminished or any of that kind of stuff, the altered scale. You want to use the whole tone scale, which is all whole tones, starting from G. Right? That's another possibility. So when you have a dominant 7 sharp 5, you want to use the whole tone. So you're going to go like this. Monk uses it. There's those big runs. Very cool sound, right? So anytime you play that tune Juju by Wayne Shorter, you got to know your whole tones. All right, so those are some definite possibilities for any kind of altered dominant. You know, work with each one of these for a while to get the sound in your head. There's many other things you can do. There's all kinds of triad pairs and things like that, but this is just something to the basics for now. One thing you should work on, let's say you're working on playing your 2-5-1s, right? And you're outlining each chord change, you're playing the arpeggio. Let's say you're doing a 2-5-1 in C major, right? So you're playing D minor 7, G dominant, C, right? You're playing your chord tones for each chord, right? So you go... right? Or you're playing your scales, Dorian, Mixolydian, major, Dorian, right? It sounds kind of plain. So you replace, when you get to the 5 chord, which is the G, then you put in the alto dominant, and it kind of gives you a tension release kind of thing. So when I'm doing the D, I'll do D Dorian, and then when I do the G, I'll do the diminished up a half step, and then when I do the C, I'll just do C major, and it gives you tension release. Here's D. See how that sounds? Dorian, diminish, C, D, Dorian, C, D, Dorian. See what I'm doing there? So like I'm playing what they call inside, which is Dorian, and then the 5 chords altered, which takes me a little bit out, gives me a little bit of tension, and then when I get back to the C, it gives you a release. So this is how you can, once you get used to these altered dominants, you can plug them in 2-5-1s, and it'll definitely give you some more interesting lines. You know, you won't be inside the whole time. You'll be able to kind of get some tension on that 5 chord and then resolve it on the 1, and that gives you a lot of interesting sounds. Okay, this is a very, very deep area, and you can spend like hours on this stuff, and I often do with all my students. We'll spend like months on all these concepts, but this is just me giving you the basics over, you know, in one little 15-minute video, 16 minutes. But you can work on this stuff, and as I always say, if you are interested in private lessons with me, I do that. I've gotten a few students from this channel. Thank you guys. And it's been working out really well. We're doing them on Zoom, and I can help you with all this stuff. And a lot of this is learning the right way to do it, and there's a lot of ways to approach it. So if you're interested, contact me through the page. If you like the lesson, please hit subscribe and like, and great seeing you guys again, and hopefully it won't be too long until the next time. Have a great night and keep rocking.